The royal palace of Valemere glittered beneath 1,000 candles. Crystal chandeliers hung from painted ceilings like constellations trapped in gold. Music flowed through the grand ballroom in elegant waves while nobles dressed in silk and jewels drifted across the polished marble floor. Every smile concealed ambition. Every conversation carried calculation. Every unmarried daughter of rank had arrived with the same purpose. Duke Nathaniel Blackthorne. At 38 he was one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. His estate stretched beyond the horizon. His influence reached the royal court itself. Generals respected him. Politicians feared him. Merchants prayed for his favor. Yet despite his wealth and authority, a shadow followed him wherever he went. The death of his wife had changed him. 5 years had passed since Duchess Isabella Blackthorne had succumbed to illness, but grief still lingered in the quiet spaces of his life. He fulfilled every duty expected of him. He attended court. He governed his lands. He raised his daughters. But he no longer laughed. The ballroom's bright splendor seemed unable to touch the cold reserve behind his dark eyes. Nathaniel stood near one of the towering windows overlooking the palace gardens. Noble women approached him throughout the evening, each hoping to capture his attention. Some praised his achievements. Others complimented his daughters. A few attempted playful flirtation. None succeeded. His replies remained polite and distant. As soon as each conversation ended, another eager candidate appeared. Across the ballroom, 2 little girls watched the procession with growing dissatisfaction. Rose Blackthorne folded her plump arms. "I don't like that one." Ruby Blackthorne nodded immediately. "Neither do I." The 6-year-old twins looked nearly identical. Both had round cheeks, chestnut curls, and bright blue eyes filled with endless curiosity. Their matching ivory gowns made them resemble tiny princesses escaped from a storybook. Unfortunately for the ladies of the kingdom, the twins had appointed themselves guardians of their father's future, and they were extremely difficult to impress. A noblewoman in emerald silk approached Nathaniel. Rose sighed dramatically. She smiled too much. Ruby agreed. Very suspicious. Another lady attempted conversation. Rose frowned. She talked about horses. Ruby wrinkled her nose. Papa doesn't like horses. The twins exchanged solemn looks. Clearly the adults were failing. Then Rose noticed someone standing alone near one of the ballroom's distant columns. Unlike the others, the woman wasn't trying to attract attention. She wasn't watching the Duke. She wasn't competing. She simply stood quietly beneath the candlelight, her golden gown shimmering softly whenever she moved. Ruby followed her sister's gaze. Both girls immediately fell silent. The woman seemed different. There was grace in the way she carried herself and sadness hidden behind her gentle expression. While others laughed loudly, she remained thoughtful. While others displayed confidence, she appeared almost reluctant to be there. Most importantly, she looked kind. Rose grabbed Ruby's hand. "We found her." Ruby's eyes widened. "We did." Without hesitation, the twins slipped away from their governess and disappeared into the crowd. The woman noticed them approaching and smiled. It wasn't the practiced smile worn by ambitious noblewomen. It was warm. Real. Rose stopped directly in front of her. "Hello." The woman lowered herself gracefully to one knee so their eyes were level. "Hello." Ruby studied her carefully. "What is your name?" "Evelina." The twins exchanged another look. That was a beautiful name. Lady Evelina Ashcroft watched the little girls with amused affection. She had expected many things when she accepted the palace invitation. She had not expected this. Rose suddenly held out a rose she had stolen from a decorative arrangement. Ruby produced another. The flowers looked enormous in their tiny hands. "These are for you," Rose declared. A flicker of surprise crossed Evelina's face. "For me?" Both girls nodded. Something shifted behind Evelina's eyes. For a brief moment she looked overwhelmed. Then she accepted the roses with careful gentleness. "They're beautiful." Ruby smiled triumphantly. "We knew you'd like them." The warmth in Evelina's expression deepened. Perhaps because no one had offered her flowers in a very long time. Around them, curious guests began watching. Whispers spread. The Duke's daughters had selected a favorite. Rose glanced at Ruby. Ruby nodded. Together, they delivered the decision they had clearly been discussing all evening. "You should marry our father." The words rang through the nearby crowd. Silence lasted exactly 1 heartbeat. Then laughter erupted. Nobles chuckled behind gloved hands. Several ladies looked horrified. Others looked offended. The twins remained completely serious. Evelina froze. The roses trembled slightly between her fingers. Across the ballroom, Nathaniel heard the commotion and turned. The sound of laughter faded beneath the sudden rush of blood in his ears. Because the woman holding the roses looked strangely familiar. Rose tugged Evelina's sleeve. "Will you?" Ruby added helpfully. "We already picked you." More laughter rippled through the room. But Evelina didn't laugh. Instead, she looked down at the twins with heartbreaking tenderness. Then she lifted her gaze. Toward the man standing across the ballroom. Toward the Duke she had once loved with her entire heart. The smile vanished from her face. Pain flickered through her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft enough that it should have been lost beneath the music. Yet somehow every person in the ballroom heard it. "I cannot marry a man who once promised to marry me and never came." The word struck Nathaniel like a blade. The laughter died instantly. The musicians faltered. Conversation stopped. Even the candles seemed to tremble in the silence that followed. For 12 years he had imagined this moment differently. He had imagined anger, accusations, bitterness. He had never imagined hearing the wound he thought only he carried. Slowly Nathaniel stepped forward. His heartbeat thundered louder with every step. The crowd parted instinctively. Evelina remained motionless. The twins looked between them in growing confusion. Nathaniel stopped only a few feet away. Time seemed to collapse inward. 12 years vanished. One glance was enough. The same eyes. The same face. The same woman who had haunted every forgotten corner of his memory. Disbelief flickered across his features. Then recognition. Then something far more dangerous. The ache of a love he had never truly buried. His voice emerged barely above a whisper. "Evelina?" For the first time in 12 years, Lady Evelina Ashcroft looked directly into Duke Nathaniel Blackthorne's eyes. And the entire kingdom watched as two hearts broken by the same past recognized each other once more. No one moved. The grand ballroom remained suspended in stunned silence as though the entire palace had forgotten how to breathe. Nathaniel Blackthorne stared at the woman before him, and for a moment he was no longer a duke standing beneath crystal chandeliers. He was 26 again. Young, hopeful, in love. Evelina Ashcroft stood exactly where fate had placed her 12 years earlier, directly in the path of every future he had once imagined. The twins looked between them. Rose tugged on Nathaniel's sleeve. "Papa?" He barely heard her. His gaze never left Evelina. Neither spoke. Neither looked away. The years separating them seemed impossibly thin. Yet the pain between them felt endless. Finally Nathaniel found his voice. "You disappeared." The accusation emerged quietly, carrying more hurt than anger. Evelina's fingers tightened around the roses. A shadow crossed her face. "So did you." The words struck with equal force. Around them, nobles exchanged uneasy glances. The twins sensed something important unfolding. For once, neither interrupted. Nathaniel gestured toward a nearby private salon adjoining the ballroom. "We need to speak." Evelina hesitated. Every instinct urged her to leave. She had spent 12 years rebuilding herself from the ruins of a broken heart. One conversation could shatter all that hard-earned peace. Yet another part of her, the foolish part she thought had died long ago, wanted answers. She nodded. Minutes later they stood alone in the candlelit room while distant music drifted through closed doors. For several moments neither spoke. The silence felt strangely familiar. Nathaniel broke it first. "Why didn't you come?" Evelina stared at him. The question was simple. The answer was not. 12 years earlier she had asked herself that same question countless times. Why hadn't he come? Why hadn't he fought for her? Why had he abandoned everything they promised each other? She looked away. "I waited for hours." Nathaniel frowned. "What?" "At St. Aldrich's Chapel." His expression changed. Confusion replaced certainty. Evelina swallowed. "I stood there in my wedding dress from sunrise until sunset." Nathaniel's face drained of color. For the first time uncertainty entered his eyes. "That's impossible." "It happened. I was there." She looked back at him. "I never saw you." Nathaniel stepped closer. "Because you never arrived." The old wound reopened instantly. Pain flashed across Evelina's features. "I arrived before everyone else." "No." "Yes." "No." The single word echoed through the room. Both stopped speaking. Both suddenly realized something terrifying. Neither sounded like someone telling a lie. Nathaniel's heart pounded. 12 years of certainty began cracking. He remembered the letter. The cruel letter. The one delivered shortly before the ceremony. He could still see every word. Every sentence. Every knife thrust into his heart. Slowly he asked, Then why did I receive a letter saying you never loved me? Evelina froze. What letter? Nathaniel stared. You wrote it. I did no such thing. His jaw tightened. I kept it. Shock spread across her face. I never sent you any letter. The room seemed colder. Neither understood what was happening. Then Evelina whispered, I received one too. Nathaniel blinked. A letter? She nodded. The memory still hurt. It arrived the night before the wedding. What did it say? Her voice trembled. It said you had chosen another woman. Nathaniel looked genuinely horrified. What? It said your family had found a better match. She forced herself to continue. It said you regretted everything. Every word landed like a hammer. Nathaniel took a slow step backward. Because he had never written such a letter. Not one word. Not one sentence. A terrible possibility began forming between them. Someone had lied. Someone had manipulated them. Someone had destroyed two lives with ink and paper. Neither spoke for several moments. Outside, the music resumed. Inside, everything had changed. Rose and Ruby were waiting when the salon doors opened. The twins immediately rushed toward Evelina. We missed you. Evelina laughed softly despite herself. The sound surprised Nathaniel. He had forgotten how beautiful her laughter was. Rose slipped her hand into Evelina's. Ruby claimed the other. The girls clearly considered the matter settled. Evelina belonged with them. As the evening continued, the twins refused to leave her side. They dragged her across the ballroom. They introduced her to servants. They showed her their favorite paintings. They shared stories about their dog, their pony, and the time Ruby accidentally trapped a bishop inside a pantry. For the first time in years, Nathaniel found himself watching someone rather than watching over everyone. He watched Evelina kneel whenever the girls spoke. He watched her listen carefully to every story. He watched Rose rest her head against her shoulder. And he watched something soften inside his daughters. The realization unsettled him. The girls adored her. Worse, he understood why. Hours later, guests began departing beneath moonlit skies. Nathaniel insisted on assigning additional guards to escort Evelina home. She initially refused. He insisted. She finally relented. The carriage rolled through quiet streets while shadows stretched across the sleeping capital. 3 mounted guards rode alongside. Everything seemed peaceful. Until an arrow shattered the silence. One guard fell instantly. The horses reared. The carriage lurched violently. Evelina grabbed the seat as another arrow slammed into the wooden frame inches from her head. Shouts erupted outside. Steel rang against steel. The coachman lost control. The carriage skidded sideways. Before panic could fully take hold, the door burst open. A masked figure climbed inside. Moonlight flashed across a raised dagger. Evelina's breath caught. The assassin lunged. Then another figure crashed through the opposite side. Nathaniel. He struck the attacker hard enough to send both men tumbling from the carriage. The vehicle rocked violently. Outside, chaos exploded. Evelina stumbled out just in time to see Nathaniel fighting beneath silver moonlight. The assassin moved with terrifying skill. But the Duke moved with desperate fury. Not the fury of a noble defending a citizen. The fury of a man refusing to lose someone twice. The struggle ended when the attacker broke free and disappeared into the darkness. Silence returned gradually. Nathaniel immediately turned toward Evelina. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Their eyes met. Neither mentioned how close death had come. Then one of the fallen guards approached carrying something recovered from the roadway. A token, Your Grace. Nathaniel accepted it. His expression darkened instantly. The object was a silver signet bearing an ancient crest. A crest he recognized. A crest belonging to one of the oldest noble houses in the kingdom. One connected not merely to politics, but to blood, to family, to secrets buried 12 years ago. And suddenly Nathaniel understood one chilling truth. Whoever had separated him from Evelina might not be finished. The attempted murder changed everything. What had begun as a painful reunion became an investigation. Nathaniel Blackthorne no longer viewed the past as a closed wound. Someone had tried to kill Evelina. Someone feared truths buried 12 years earlier. The attack transformed old heartbreak into something far more dangerous. A conspiracy. 3 days after the assault, rain tapped softly against the windows of Blackthorne Manor while Nathaniel studied documents spread across his library desk. The silver signet recovered from the assassin lay beside them. Its crest belonged to House Blackthorne. Not the main branch. A distant family line. Still close enough to unsettle him. Across the room, Rose and Ruby sat together on a velvet rug pretending to read books while secretly listening to every conversation. Their governess believed they were occupied. The twins believed they were investigators. Nathaniel looked up from the papers. "You are not detectives." Rose blinked innocently. "We know." Ruby nodded. "We are secret detectives." Nathaniel rubbed his forehead. Evelina laughed softly from her chair beside the fire. The sound warmed the room. For a brief moment, everyone forgot the darkness surrounding them. Then Nathaniel noticed something. Whenever Evelina laughed too hard, she coughed. Not dramatically. Not enough to attract attention. But enough to concern him. The cough sounded old. Like an injury that had never fully healed. Evelina immediately hid it behind a smile. Nathaniel said nothing. Yet he remembered. That afternoon new information arrived from palace archives. Old records. Witness lists. Accounts connected to significant events during the previous 20 years. Most documents proved useless. Until Rose discovered something. Or more accurately, until Rose accidentally knocked over an entire stack. Pages scattered across the carpet. Ruby crawled beneath a table retrieving them. Then she froze. "Papa." Nathaniel glanced over. "What is it?" Ruby held up a yellowed sheet. "Look." His eyes narrowed. The document described a disaster long forgotten by most of the kingdom. The royal bell tower fire. Nathaniel stared. Memory flickered. The event had occurred during a massive kingdom celebration 12 years earlier. Crowds had gathered throughout the capital. Church bells rang. Fireworks illuminated the sky. Then disaster struck. An explosion inside the ancient bell tower ignited the wooden interior. Flames spread rapidly. Panic followed. Nathaniel remembered attending. He remembered smoke, confusion, fear. The rest remained fragmented. Rose climbed onto a chair. "Were you there?" Nathaniel nodded slowly. "Yes." Ruby looked fascinated. "Were you scared?" He hesitated, then answered honestly. "Very." The room grew quiet. Evelina's expression changed. Not dramatically. Yet something unmistakable passed through her eyes. But Nathaniel noticed immediately. "Evelina?" She looked away. It was a terrible day. The answer sounded carefully chosen. Too carefully. Nathaniel watched her. "You remember it?" A long pause followed. Finally she nodded. "Yes." Nothing more. No explanation. No details. The silence itself felt suspicious. Over the following days, Nathaniel pursued every surviving witness connected to the fire. Most remembered little. Years had blurred memories. Some had died. Others had left the kingdom. Still, a pattern gradually emerged, and the pattern disturbed him. According to official records, a young noblewoman named Lady Beatrice Hawthorne had rescued him from the burning tower. The kingdom celebrated her bravery. Paintings depicted her courage. A commemorative plaque praised her sacrifice. For years Nathaniel accepted the story without question. He had even thanked her publicly. Yet something no longer fit. Every witness recalled seeing Lady Beatrice outside the tower. Not inside. Outside. Safe. Watching. One elderly servant became particularly important. His name was Harold Finch. He had worked at the palace for nearly 50 years. Age bent his shoulders but not his memory. Nathaniel met him personally. The old man studied him carefully. I wondered when someone would ask. Nathaniel leaned forward. "Ask what?" "The truth." A chill passed through the room. Harold stared into the distance. "I was there." Nathaniel's pulse quickened. "What happened?" The old servant closed his eyes. For a moment it seemed he was standing in the smoke again. The tower was burning from top to bottom. His voice grew quieter. People were screaming. "What about Lady Beatrice?" Harold shook his head. "She never entered." Nathaniel froze. The old man continued. "Everyone believed you were already dead." The words landed heavily. Everyone except one young woman. Nathaniel felt his heartbeat accelerate. "What woman?" Harold looked directly at him. "I never knew her name." The room seemed to shrink. "Tell me." The old servant nodded slowly. "She climbed." Nathaniel stared. "Climbed?" "Up the tower." Harold's weathered hands trembled slightly. The stairs were collapsing. Smoke covered everything. Nobody would follow her. A knot formed in Nathaniel's chest. Harold continued. Halfway up, part of the floor gave way. The old man swallowed. She crossed a broken beam hanging over open air. Nathaniel said nothing. He could almost see it. The height. The flames. The impossible risk. Harold looked toward the window. The city stretched hundreds of feet below. The image became sharper. A young woman alone. Fire all around her. Death beneath her feet. Still climbing. Still moving forward. Why? Nathaniel whispered. Harold smiled sadly. Because she loved you. Silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. Nathaniel felt something shift inside him. A terrible possibility. One he scarcely dared consider. That evening he returned to the manor. The twins were waiting. So was Evelina. The moment she entered the library, Nathaniel saw the tension in her face. As though she already knew what he had learned. He stood slowly. Evelina. Her breath caught. Neither twin interrupted. For once they sensed the importance of silence. Nathaniel took another step. Where were you during the bell tower fire? The question lingered between them. Evelina closed her eyes. A long moment passed. Then another. When she finally spoke, her voice barely rose above a whisper. Inside. The room fell silent. Nathaniel stared. The twins stared. Even the fire seemed quieter. Evelina slowly opened her eyes. Memories surfaced behind them. Painful memories. Dangerous memories. I heard people shouting that someone was trapped. Nathaniel's heart pounded. She continued. The smoke was everywhere. Rose squeezed Ruby's hand. Evelina looked toward the flames dancing inside the hearth. I found you beneath part of the bell mechanism. Nathaniel could hardly breathe. Every word struck him like lightning. You were unconscious. The room blurred slightly around him. You saved me. Evelina laughed once. A sad broken sound. I tried. Nathaniel remembered Harold's description. The beam. The flames. The impossible climb. His gaze drifted toward her. Toward the woman he had spent years believing abandoned him. The woman who now sat quietly before him. Alive. Scarred. Still carrying secrets. Then she coughed. Harder this time. Much harder. The sound echoed through the room. Rose immediately rushed to her side. Ruby followed. Evelina forced a reassuring smile. I'm all right. But Nathaniel understood. Smoke. The tower. The injury. Everything connected. The fire had never truly ended for her. It had followed her through 12 years. The realization struck him with devastating force. While he mourned betrayal, she had lived with the consequences of saving him. Later that night another witness arrived. A retired palace guard. He carried an old journal discovered among forgotten records. Inside were written statements collected after the fire. Nathaniel read every page personally. Near the end he found testimony confirming Harold's account. Lady Beatrice had never entered the tower. Another woman had. An unnamed woman. A woman whose description matched Evelina perfectly. His hands tightened around the journal. The official story was a lie. The kingdom had honored the wrong hero. And someone had worked very hard to keep the truth buried. Then he turned the final page. A loose sheet slipped free and landed on the desk. Nathaniel picked it up. His eyes moved across the faded handwriting. The entry described forged correspondence connected to several noble families. At the bottom appeared a single name. One name. One person. One member of his own bloodline. Nathaniel felt cold spread through his veins as he read it again. Lady Victoria Blackthorne. His aunt. And suddenly the past no longer looked like tragedy. It looked like murder disguised as destiny. Nathaniel Blackthorne did not sleep. The journal remained open on his desk long after midnight while rain drifted against the library windows. Candlelight flickered across faded pages, illuminating a truth he had spent 12 years searching for without realizing it. Lady Victoria Blackthorne. His aunt. The woman who had helped raise him after his parents died. The woman who attended every important moment of his life. The woman who had comforted him after he believed Evelina betrayed him. And now the woman whose name appeared repeatedly beside records of intercepted correspondence, destroyed letters, and secret payments. Nathaniel felt sick. Not because he doubted the evidence. Because he no longer did. Across from him sat Evelina. Neither had spoken for several minutes. The silence between them was no longer hostile. It was fragile. Two people standing among the ruins of a lie. Finally Nathaniel looked up. I should have searched for you. Evelina's expression softened. You believed I abandoned you. That is no excuse. His voice sounded rough. I hated you. The confession hung heavily in the room. Evelina lowered her gaze. I know. Nathaniel stared at the fire. For years I convinced myself I no longer cared. A sad smile touched her lips. That makes two of us. Neither pretended the pain had disappeared. Some wounds healed slowly. Some required truth before forgiveness could even begin. Before either could speak again, the library doors burst open. Rose and Ruby hurried inside. Their curls bounced wildly as they ran. "We found something. We really found something." Nathaniel immediately straightened. The twins had spent days treating the manor like an archaeological expedition. Most discoveries involved hidden sweets or forgotten toys. Their excitement suggested this was different. Rose thrust a small brass key into the air. Ruby held an old parchment map. "We found a secret room." Nathaniel sighed. "Of course you did." The twins grabbed his hands simultaneously. "Come see." Within minutes they crossed a rarely used corridor deep inside the oldest wing of Blackthorne Manor. Dust coated the walls. Portraits watched silently from gilded frames. The air carried the scent of age and forgotten memories. Rose stopped before a large painting of Duchess Isabella. The portrait showed her smiling softly, her hands resting on the shoulders of younger versions of the twins. Nathaniel's chest tightened. He still missed her every day. Ruby pointed excitedly. Behind it. Nathaniel carefully moved the painting aside. A concealed compartment emerged from the stone wall. Everyone fell silent. Inside rested a small wooden box. Nothing more. Nothing less. As though someone had hidden a single precious secret and trusted fate to protect it. Nathaniel lifted the box. His hand suddenly felt unsteady. The lid opened with a soft click. Inside lay a sealed envelope. The handwriting across the front stopped his breath. "Nathaniel, if you are reading this, I am gone. Isabella." The room disappeared. For one impossible moment it felt as though his late wife had reached across death itself. Even Evelina looked visibly shaken. Rose and Ruby grew unusually quiet. They recognized their mother's handwriting immediately. Nathaniel carefully broke the seal. His fingers trembled. Then he began reading. "My dearest Nathaniel, if this letter has found you, then I was unable to tell you what I discovered. I pray you will read every word before anger or grief convinces you to stop." Nathaniel swallowed hard. The twins moved closer. The letter continued. "Several years ago I learned something that changed my understanding of our marriage, your past, and the woman you once loved. Lady Evelina Ashcroft never betrayed you." The words struck like thunder. Even though Nathaniel already suspected the truth, seeing it written by Isabella made it undeniable. The room remained utterly silent. "I uncovered evidence proving that letters were forged before your wedding. Messages were intercepted. Meetings were prevented. Your separation was carefully planned. Neither of you abandoned the other. You were both victims." Nathaniel's vision blurred. He continued reading. "At first I did not know whether to tell you. I feared reopening wounds. I feared destroying the life we had built together. Then I met Evelina." A sharp breath escaped him. The letter went on. "I expected bitterness. Instead I found kindness. I expected resentment. Instead I found dignity. She never spoke ill of you. Not once." The silence deepened. Evelina looked away. Nathaniel remembered every cruel thing he had believed about her. Every false judgment. Every year wasted. "I realized then that two good people had suffered because others desired power. I intended to tell you everything. Illness arrived before courage did. For that failure I am sorry." Nathaniel paused. His hands shook visibly now. Tears filled Rose's eyes. Ruby pressed closer against his side. The final portion of the letter waited. The most important part. Nathaniel forced himself to continue. "There is something else you must know. You loved her before you ever loved me. Do not deny it. I always knew. And I was never jealous." The words shattered something inside him. Because they sounded exactly like Isabella. Honest. Compassionate. Wise. "I loved you enough to accept the truth. I only regret that neither of you received the happiness you deserved. If you discover this after my death, promise me one thing. Do not spend the rest of your life punishing yourself. Find her. Forgive yourself. And if your heart still belongs to her, love her enough for both of us." Nathaniel lowered the letter. For several moments he could not speak. Years of guilt, grief, and regret collided inside him. He had lost Isabella. He had lost Evelina. And now he understood that neither loss had been inevitable. The twins wrapped their arms around him. For the first time in many years, Nathaniel Blackthorne wept. Not quietly. Not behind closed doors. Openly. The tears came from a place too deep to restrain. Rose cried with him. Ruby cried because Rose cried. Even Evelina struggled against her own emotions. The woman who had once believed she hated Isabella now felt overwhelming gratitude toward her. The Duchess had known the truth. And even in death she had chosen kindness. Hours later, Nathaniel emerged from the hidden chamber carrying renewed determination. No more uncertainty. No more hesitation. Lady Victoria would answer for everything. Orders were dispatched immediately. Guards rode through the night. Arrest warrants were issued. Search teams spread across the kingdom. Yet dawn arrived with troubling news. Lady Victoria had vanished. Her estate stood abandoned. Servants reported she fled before midnight. As if she somehow knew the truth had finally surfaced. The discovery darkened Nathaniel's mood. Desperate people became dangerous. Cornered people became reckless. The following evening Blackthorne Manor seemed unusually quiet. Too quiet. Nathaniel noticed it first. No laughter. No running footsteps. No arguments over desserts. No twins. A cold sensation settled in his stomach. He stood immediately. Where are Rose and Ruby? Servants exchanged worried looks. No one knew. The search began instantly. Rooms were checked. Gardens were searched. Stables were inspected. Nothing. Then a footman appeared carrying a folded note discovered inside the nursery. Nathaniel snatched it from his hand. His pulse thundered as he unfolded the paper. One sentence awaited him. If you want the girls alive, come to the abandoned royal bell tower alone. The note bore no signature. It did not need one. Nathaniel already knew. The same woman who stole 12 years of happiness had now stolen the two people he loved most. The letter slipped from his fingers. Across the room Evelina turned pale. Outside, thunder rolled across the darkening sky. And far above the kingdom, the abandoned bell tower stood against the horizon like a ghost from the past, waiting for them all once more. Thunder rolled across the kingdom as Duke Nathaniel Blackthorne rode through the storm with a desperation he had never known before. Rain lashed his face. Wind tore at his cloak. Nothing mattered except reaching the bell tower. Rose and Ruby were inside. His daughters. His heart. The only reason he had survived the darkest years of his life. Beside him rode Evelina. Despite the cold rain and the worsening weather, she refused to remain behind. Nathaniel had argued. She had ignored him. The abandoned tower rose from the cliffs overlooking the capital, its ancient silhouette cutting through flashes of lightning. Time had damaged the structure. Cracks split the stone walls. Broken windows gaped like dark wounds. The bells themselves had long since fallen silent. Yet tonight the tower felt alive. Waiting. Remembering. The moment they arrived, Nathaniel dismounted and rushed toward the entrance. "Evelina, stay behind me." She met his gaze. 12 years ago I climbed this tower for you." A flash of lightning illuminated her face. "I'm not afraid of it now." The words settled deep inside him. Together they entered. The interior smelled of rain, dust, and ancient wood. Above them, storm winds howled through shattered openings. Then they heard it. A frightened cry. "Papa!" "Rose!" Nathaniel's blood turned to ice. The voice came from above. He sprinted toward the spiral staircase. Evelina followed. The climb felt endless. Every step groaned beneath their weight. Water dripped through cracks overhead. The storm battered the tower from every direction. Far above, another cry echoed. This time Ruby. Nathaniel pushed harder. He would tear the entire tower apart stone by stone if necessary. They finally emerged onto the upper bell platform. Lightning flashed. The scene before them froze the blood in Nathaniel's veins. Rose and Ruby stood trapped near the edge of the platform. Lady Victoria gripped Ruby's arm tightly. Her elegant appearance had vanished. Rain soaked her clothing. Madness burned in her eyes. Years of ambition and bitterness had finally consumed her. "You ruined everything," she screamed. Nathaniel stepped forward. "Release them." "No." The word cracked through the storm. Victoria laughed bitterly. "For decades I sacrificed everything for this family. You destroyed this family." The accusation landed like a blade. Victoria's face twisted. "I gave you opportunity. You stole my life." Nathaniel's voice thundered louder than the storm. "You stole hers." His gaze shifted briefly toward Evelina. Victoria followed it. Hatred immediately surfaced. "That woman was never worthy of you." Evelina remained calm. Perhaps because she no longer feared the woman who had already taken everything she once loved. Rose suddenly stomped her foot. "You are mean." Ruby nodded fiercely. "Very mean." For one ridiculous moment even Nathaniel nearly smiled. Then disaster struck. A violent crack echoed overhead. Everyone looked up. The ancient support beams were beginning to fail. Years of neglect and the storm's fury were tearing the tower apart. Stone fragments rained downward. Victoria's eyes widened. The structure was collapsing. Panic erupted. Rose broke free first and ran toward Nathaniel. At the same moment, another section of flooring gave way beneath Ruby. The child screamed. Time seemed to stop. Ruby disappeared through the collapsing platform. Evelina moved before anyone else. Without hesitation, she lunged forward. Her hand caught Ruby's wrist. The little girl dangled over open air. Hundreds of feet below, lightning illuminated the city. Nathaniel reached Rose and pulled her to safety. Then he turned. His heart nearly stopped. Evelina lay stretched across broken timber, desperately holding Ruby above the abyss. The damaged wood beneath them creaked ominously. One more failure and both would fall. Evelina. Rain streamed across her face. Her injured lungs struggled for breath. Still she refused to let go. Ruby sobbed. I don't want to fall. You won't. Evelina's voice shook but remained steady. I promise. The words carried the same courage she had shown 12 years earlier. Once again she stood between death and someone Nathaniel loved. Once again she chose sacrifice. Nathaniel crawled forward carefully. The floor shifted beneath him. Another beam snapped somewhere below. The entire tower groaned. Hurry! Rose cried. Victoria attempted to flee. A falling section of stone blocked her path. For the first time, fear replaced arrogance. The tower no longer cared about her schemes. It threatened everyone equally. Nathaniel finally reached Evelina. Their eyes met. In that moment neither saw the storm. Neither saw danger. They saw 12 stolen years. 12 years of separation. 12 years of grief. 12 years that should have belonged to them. Together they pulled Ruby upward. The instant she reached safety, a massive crack split through the platform. Move! Nathaniel shouted. The group ran toward the staircase. Behind them the upper section of the tower began collapsing. Wood exploded. Stone shattered. Ancient bells broke loose from their supports. The entire structure seemed determined to erase itself from history. They descended as fast as possible. Dust filled the air. Thunder echoed through the stairwell. At one landing, Victoria stumbled. For a brief moment she hung over a broken edge. Terror filled her eyes. Nathaniel looked at her. The woman who had stolen his future. The woman responsible for years of suffering. Yet he extended his hand. Victoria stared. Slowly, tears mixed with rain on her face. She accepted. Nathaniel pulled her to safety. Not because she deserved mercy. Because he refused to become like her. Moments later they burst from the tower. The family stumbled across the rain-soaked ground. Then, with a deafening roar, the upper portion of the bell tower collapsed behind them. Stone and dust erupted into the night sky. The kingdom's oldest monument finally fell. Silence followed. Rose threw herself into Nathaniel's arms. Ruby immediately hugged Evelina. Both girls were crying. Both were safe. That was all that mattered. Weeks later the truth spread across the kingdom. Witnesses came forward. Records were examined. Victoria confessed everything. The forged letters. The manipulation. The years of deception. The truth about the bell tower rescue became public as well. For the first time, the kingdom learned the name of the woman who had saved Duke Nathaniel Blackthorne 12 years earlier. Lady Evelina Ashcroft. People spoke of her courage. Her sacrifice. Her damaged lungs. Her quiet endurance. Most astonishing of all was the testimony left behind by Duchess Isabella. The letter became known throughout the kingdom. Many wept upon hearing her final wish. Even in death, she had chosen compassion over jealousy. Months later, a royal celebration filled the palace gardens. Music drifted beneath golden lanterns. Flowers decorated every pathway. The kingdom gathered not to celebrate power, but truth. Nathaniel stood beneath an archway of white roses. For the first time in years, peace rested upon his features. Not because the past was forgotten, because it was finally understood. Across the garden, Evelina approached. The evening sunlight painted gold across her gown. Rose and Ruby walked beside her carrying two familiar roses. The twins stopped before her. Their smiles widened. Then they repeated the same words that had changed everything months earlier. You should marry our father. Laughter spread through the crowd. Evelina looked down at them. Then toward Nathaniel. The Duke's eyes never left hers. This time there was no misunderstanding between them. No forged letters. No lies. No stolen future. Only truth. Only love. Only choice. Evelina smiled. A real smile. The kind she had not worn in years. Yes. The crowd gasped. Before anyone could react, Nathaniel dropped to one knee. Emotion filled his voice. Lady Evelina Ashcroft, you were my first love. His eyes glistened. You became the greatest regret of my life. Silence surrounded them. But if you will allow it, I would like you to become my future. Tears filled Evelina's eyes. The twins were already cheering. She laughed through those tears and offered him her hand. Yes, Nathaniel. The garden erupted. Applause thundered. Music soared. Rose and Ruby jumped excitedly between them. Nathaniel rose and gently kissed Evelina's hand. Not as a duke. Not as one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. But as a man who had finally found his way home. And beneath a sky glowing with fireworks, surrounded by the family that fate had nearly stolen from him, he embraced the woman he had never stopped loving, while two delighted little girls celebrated the happiest victory of all. The family they had chosen had finally become the family they deserved.